Once upon a time, perhaps thousands of years ago, or maybe from an age far beyond what even myths can remember, people whispered of a place that once was.
A mighty kingdom rising from the path of the ocean.
It was a land so wealthy, so splendid, so impossibly radiant, that even the finest Greek poets struggled to capture its beauty in verse. And the greatest philosophers, faced with its mystery, could only utter its name in awe and doubt, Atlantis. They said its towers touched the sky, its streets paved with gold and orichalcum, its people living in harmony under laws wiser than any known today.
A Utopia, lost in a single night, swallowed by the sea, vanishing into legend.
But was it ever real? Or merely a cautionary tale dressed in splendor? Are you ready to dive into one of the most enduring enigmas of all time? Then let us begin. With the voice of a man who lived over 2 millennia ago. A philosopher of unmatched intellect, who first dared to speak the name that would echo across centuries, Atlantis. That name, Atlantis, first echoed through history from the lips of a legendary man. Plato, the famed philosopher of Athens and one of the founding minds of Western philosophy. In 2 of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato recounted a tale of a mighty civilization that once ruled a vast part of the world. A place that existed long before written memory. A powerful empire blessed with riches, knowledge, and divine favor. But one day and one night changed everything. In a single stroke of divine wrath, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea, vanishing without a trace. Since then, Atlantis has ceased to be just a name on a map. It became a symbol, a myth, a warning, a dream of what once was, or what could be.
Power, perfection, pride, and the inevitable fall.
Plato never claimed it as his own invention. He said the story had been passed down through generations, starting with his ancestor Solon, a wise statesman of Athens who had traveled to Egypt. There, priests of an ancient temple shared with him tales of a lost land west of the Pillars of Hercules, today known as the Strait of Gibraltar. They spoke of a civilization so rich that gold and bronze were used like common stone, of a city built in perfect concentric rings of land and sea, radiating out from a central hill. On that hill, the story goes, the god Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito. He built a palace for her at the heart of the city and fathered 10 sons. Each ruled a portion of Atlantis, but the eldest, Atlas, became the supreme king. From his name, the empire was called Atlantis.
The city sparkled like a jewel in the ocean.
Temples plated in silver, roads of black and white stone, statues cast in glowing red metal. Canals connected the rings of the city to the sea, while ships from across the world docked in its harbors.
Atlantis had it all. Art, science, military strength, divine protection, and untold prosperity.
But within its greatness lay its undoing. At first, the Atlanteans were noble. They honored the gods, lived with wisdom and balance, and followed the laws Poseidon had given them. But as generations passed, greed grew. They became arrogant, forgot their sacred origins, and reached for more than they were meant to hold. Their armies invaded other lands, Egypt, Greece, and beyond. And so, Zeus, king of the gods, decided that Atlantis must fall. He summoned the gods, and together they unleashed earthquake, fire, and flood.
The sea rose, the land broke apart. And in a single day and night, the empire disappeared beneath the wave.
No one survived. What remained was not ruins, but legend. But, was it just a story? A philosophical metaphor? Or did Atlantis truly exist, glorious and doomed? That question has haunted humanity for over 2,000 years. And now, it's your turn to step into the mystery.
We dive deeper into the lost world of Atlantis. Close your eyes and imagine. In the path of the vast ocean, where golden sunlight kisses deep blue wave, rises a colossal island. A land shaped by both wild nature and divine craftsmanship.
This was Atlantis, not just a city, but an empire carved by the gods. At its core lay the capital, built in hypnotic concentric rings, 3 of land, 2 of water, linked by man-made canals. At the center stood the palace of King Atlas, firstborn of Poseidon, raised on a sacred hill the god himself had formed for his beloved mortal Cleito. Every part of the city defied imagination. White, black, and red stones quarried from volcanic mountains were used to pave streets, build massive columns, and construct stunning, durable buildings.
High domed structure and curved balcony gleamed in the sun, like a constellation fallen to earth.
Statues of gods, cascading fountains, lush hanging gardens, and ivy-covered walls lined the walkways. The temples of Poseidon, their chief deity, stood as the heart of spiritual power. The grandest was adorned with gold and silver, housing a towering statue of Poseidon on his sea chariot, cast in legendary Archaeological, a metal known only in myth. On each full moon, people gathered at the central temple with offerings, amid bronze horns, ocean waves, and flickering torchlight reflected in precious stones. In those moments, it felt as if time paused, and the gods walked among mortals. Yet Atlantis was more than splendor, it was organized brilliance. The city was precisely planned: residential districts, trade zones, military quarters, and farmlands, all connected by a web of canals and bridges like veins through a living being. Their irrigation systems were said to be so advanced, they could manage water levels on terraced farms. They built reservoirs, diverted mountain streams, and prevented seawater from flooding their lands, technologies that surpassed many civilizations centuries later. Outside the capital, vast plains reached toward the sea. There, the Atlanteans farmed barley, olives, grapes, and raised powerful cattle bred over generations. Their wealth came not just from minerals, but from agriculture, trade, and mastery of self-sufficiency. But what made Atlantis truly legendary was harmony. The seamless blend of nature and architecture, God and man, sea and land, logic and soul. Because of that harmony, Atlantis birthed a radiant culture. Their schools taught astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and ethics. Public squares echoed with debates on justice, lessons on cosmic order, and music praising Poseidon. Atlantis was a place where humanity didn't merely survive, they reached for something greater. But, as Plato warned, within greatness, corruption can bloom.
Over time, Atlantéens grew arrogant.
They believed themselves equal to the gods. Kings sought not justice, but glory. Wealth overshadowed virtue. Sacred laws were forgotten.
And so, the balance faltered. The brighter the flame, the darker the shadow it cast.
And for Atlantis, that shadow was already falling. Nothing is eternal, not even the brilliance of a civilization once blessed by the gods. Atlantis, the favored child of Poseidon, flourished with fertile lands, wise people, and divine protection. But over time, it strayed from the gods' path. The early generations were noble, humble, and just. But they were replaced by rulers drunk on power, nobles lost in luxury, and armies that conquered not for justice, but for pride. The sacred rites faded. The temple of Poseidon fell silent. Worship turned into feasts of flesh and gold. And to the gods above, this was a betrayal. Then came the signs. The moon rose out of rhythm. Winds shifted. Strange beasts washed ashore. Stars vanished. And the great temple trembled in windless nights. The last priests, trembling before cracked statues, whispered, "The gods are angry." On Olympus, Zeus summoned the divine council. With lightning in his eyes and thunder in his voice, he looked down and spoke. Poseidon's bloodline has fallen. Their time has ended. Poseidon, heartbroken, released his fury. The seas rose. Tsunamis towered like mountains. Volcanoes screamed. The earth split open. Atlantis fell into chaos. The sky turned a sickly orange. A massive wave rose on the horizon. Bells rang, but no one heard them over the roar. Boiling water burst through canals. The temple of Poseidon exploded like thunder from the gods. No wall stood tall enough. No ship sailed fast enough. Buildings, bridges, people, all were consumed by fire, sea, and stone. By sunrise, Atlantis was gone. Where once stood a shining empire, now lay a cold, silent sea.
No ruins. No survivors.
Only whispers beneath the waves. And so, Atlantis became legend. But perhaps, it still waits beneath the depths. And if found, will we be ready for what it reveals? Ever since Plato first penned the tale, scholars, some curious, others skeptical, have never stopped searching for Atlantis. For thousands of years, humanity has scoured ancient maps and the ocean floor, studied faded tomb inscriptions in Egypt, and scanned the globe with satellites. Yet the question remains unanswered. Was Atlantis ever real? Some historians argue that Atlantis might not be pure myth, but a distant echo, a collective memory of a forgotten civilization. Among the most compelling theories is the link between Atlantis and the Minoan civilization, which once thrived on the islands of Crete and Santorini, ancient Thera, around 1600 BCE. The Minoans were remarkably advanced. They had written language, flourishing art, sprawling palace architecture, and irrigation systems rivaling those described in Plato's Atlantis. But then, around 1600 BCE, catastrophe struck. The Thera volcano erupted in one of the most violent explosions in human history, hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The blast triggered earthquakes and tsunamis, devastating the entire region. The Minoans, once at the peak of their power, vanished almost overnight. What remained were charred walls, buried cities, and whispers passed down through generations. Could that have been Atlantis? In recent decades, modern technology has reignited the search. Researchers have discovered mysterious structures beneath the sea, off the coast of Spain, in the Caribbean, and even within the infamous Bermuda Triangle. Some believe these ruins may be traces of a sunken metropolis. While no definitive proof has surfaced, each discovery fuels the ever-burning flame of human imagination. Yet, many scholars believe Atlantis was never meant to be found, because it was never a place. Plato, a student of Socrates, was not writing fantasy. He crafted Atlantis as a philosophical allegory, a tale of a utopia that falls to corruption, a warning against arrogance and moral decay. In contrast to the idealized Athens, Atlantis represented what happens when power outweighs virtue. If so, then Atlantis is not a city. It is a lesson. Dozens of locations around the world have been claimed as the true Atlantis. Each site, each researcher, believes they've uncovered the real clue. Egypt, where, according to Plato, Solon first heard the tale. Some believe Atlantis was not across the sea, but buried beneath the sands of the Nile, lost to desert and time. The Bahamas and the Bermuda Triangle, where strange underwater stone formations, pyramid-like shapes, and squared platforms have sparked endless speculation. Myths may have distorted the facts, but the mystery remains unexplained. Off the coast of Spain, near Dinana National Park, massive stone circles lie hidden beneath layers of clay, eerily similar to Plato's concentric rings. And even Antarctica, a bold theory suggests a lost civilization once thrived there, over 10,000 years ago, before the continent froze. So the question is no longer just where is Atlantis? But rather, are we ready to face a version of Atlantis far different from the one we imagined? Whether it truly existed or not, Atlantis has lived on in human culture for centuries. In Western mythology, it became home to superhumans, giants, and sea dwellers who spoke and breathed underwater. In world literature, writers like Jules Verne and Edgar Cayce transformed the legend into endless adventures and mysteries. On screen, Atlantis takes many forms: a hidden underwater kingdom in Aquaman, a lost magical city in Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire. In games, comics, music, and documentaries, the name still conjures something timeless, mysterious, majestic, and forever lost. Why? Perhaps because deep down, each of us carries our own Atlantis. A beautiful, perfect place, once real, and now unreachable. Perhaps Atlantis never existed, but its meaning is deeply real. Plato didn't write Atlantis as a fairy tale. He wrote it as a warning. He saw Athens growing arrogant, forgetting the gods, placing wealth and power above virtue. And through Atlantis, he said, "Look there, that is what becomes of a civilization that loses its soul." Today, that warning feels more urgent than ever. Climate change, resource depletion, wars for profit, empires collapsing, cities sinking beneath rising seas. We are living in an age where Atlantis is no longer just a myth. It is a mirror, a reflection of what awaits us. If we forget how to be humble again, what if, one day, the ruins of Atlantis are truly discovered? Shattered statues, ancient metallic structures, inscriptions no one can yet decode. How would the world react? History would be rewritten. Religions would begin to question. Scientific theories about evolution, civilization, and human progress would be shaken. And above all, humanity would face a humbling truth. We may not have been the first to reach the heights of greatness. If found, Atlantis would be more than ruins. It would be a mirror, reflecting who we are today. A reminder that even the most advanced civilizations can fall. And that perhaps, we are walking a path once already taken. As you sit here, listening to this story, perhaps you remain skeptical, and that's okay. But let me ask you, what is it about Atlantis that stays with us, even though no one has ever truly seen it? It's not the gold. Not the temples. It's the idea. The idea of a place where humans lived in harmony with the divine, respected the natural order, and built a society on justice, wisdom, and humility. And the idea that when we lose those things, no matter how high our walls or how vast our wealth, we will be swept away. Atlantis may never have existed in the real world. But in our imagination, in our moral compass, and in the whispers of the ocean, it has always been there. And perhaps, it's precisely because it never existed that Atlantis has become so great. Thank you for staying with me to the very end. If this story stirred something inside you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join me next time as we journey into more forgotten legends, from El Dorado to Lemuria, from Shambhala to dreams still unnamed. Until then, keep searching.